Okay, good day, students, and welcome to today's lecture. If you remember, in our last week's lecture, we covered in week 8 teaching and learning materials in the media and the characteristics of the media, and we went through some of those and we spoke about the different dimensions of using certain types of multimedia and so on and so forth. So, continuing on with that particular theme, we will, in this week's lecture and in the coming lectures, be speaking about learning and teaching support materials, so LTSM abbreviated. So for this week, within this topic, we will be talking about the different types of media that are available, and we will be discussing this with a pedagogical perspective. Okay, so most of us are tech savvy. We know more or less the different types of media that we get. However, we need to take into consideration some of the choices we make when it comes to media, as this may affect the way we teach and also the way that students learn as well. So, some of the aspects that we can look at or need to consider are the following. So, the first one we need to consider is your epistemological position and the theory behind this. So basically, if you are a teacher that follows a particular epistemological view, this dictates the way you teach and your teaching style, and students become accustomed to this. So, for example, if you are a teacher who leans towards a positivist view, is this type of person who relies heavily on facts and data and letting that speak for itself. You get others in different positions, but this is just one aspect to consider when putting forth media to your students. Are we giving them media that they can derive factual knowledge from, or are we leaving it open to their interpretation and so on and so forth? The other aspect that we can consider or look at is what are the desired learning outcomes. So if you are teaching something and you have a particular set of outcomes that are required for students to learn, you know, what is the media that we are choosing really suitable for that? That leads us obviously to the next one. What teaching methods will be employed? So if we know what the learning outcomes are, we will then need to consider what teaching methods will be employed. So let's take a current example. The learning outcomes could be teaching students a particular area within IT, and the teaching methods as we were used to were sitting in front of the class. However, if you are at a school where you are required to actually now record lessons, will you solely rely on you know, instruction in front of the class, in front of the chalkboard or whiteboard, or will you incorporate, slideshows or, so your teaching methods can be influenced, and this is one aspect to consider when creating our content or media or teaching material for the class. Another aspect that we can talk about are the unique educational characteristics of each medium and how well do they match to the learning and teaching requirements. So, coming back to this example, if you are required to record your lectures from now on, or share content via WhatsApp, uh, is this medium suitable for our teaching and learning requirements? Can you conduct your lesson on, let's say, a short 2-minute video on WhatsApp? Is it sufficient? What are the characteristics of using something, for instance, like WhatsApp? There's a data limit to the file you can upload. There's a time limit. Can a lesson really be conducted? Or, do I need to break this down into different parts? So these are some of the unique educational characteristics of each medium that we need to consider. And one last aspect that we can also consider is what resources are available. So not necessarily just to yourself, but also to students. If you are creating media that is in a digital format, do students have the necessary equipment to actually receive that media that you are creating? So these are some of the aspects that we will be looking at and we need to consider in our process of actually choosing the material for teaching and learning. So we'll see in coming lectures as well, not today. There are methods that we can go about for choosing certain media, and this is based on theory and the type of learning and the type of teaching that it allows for. So, we speak about media, and one aspect to consider are the affordances of the media that we choose. So, as these lectures progress, you will see some of these will be spoken about as we go about. So, in choosing media, we will just touch on this in first introductory lecture for this theme on three core elements that you should consider. And this should be, at the forefront of your mind going into these lectures when we speak about this. So, the first core element of the media that we choose is the affordances. So, when we speak about, okay, so this is just a characteristic, it's not the actual core element. The core elements will come up. But from the previous slide, as I mentioned to you, in choosing media, we have to consider the affordances of the media that we choose. Are these, you know, media that we're choosing the best match for our teaching style, firstly, and also for the learner's learning style as well? Are these media best match for each of the stakeholders involved? Do the people involved can have the necessary resources to access this media, and so on and so forth. And it brings us onto the core elements that we should consider of the different types of media. And the first one that we can see is first basically is the content that we are creating the media on. So if you are choosing a particular media and you have to base it around a certain topic, what is the content of the topic or theme or whatever the case may be? This is a core element in choosing a media. The next one that we lead on to from content obviously is the structure of the content. If we are putting a particular set of content within our lesson or whatever we are coming up with, we need to structure it in a particular way. And this is not just some abstract term content structure. We should actually think about it. For instance, and I will discuss this in the coming slides, do we teach in a linear fashion, or are our lessons going back and forth between topics to gain a particular understanding? So we'll speak about that more shortly. And the last element that we can talk about is the skills that we hope to set out from the media that we create. So the reason we talk about skills in terms of media, according to the researchers Olson and Brunner, in their research, they have basically discussed this topic and have come up and said that learning is made up of acquiring of two things. Firstly, learning is made up of acquiring knowledge of facts, concepts, and data, and so on and so forth. And secondly, it is also learning is also made up of using that same knowledge to develop skills. Okay, so two things. When it comes to the core elements, we said it's the content structure, and the skills. And how does this relate to our teaching and learning? It is because researchers, as I said, have stated learning is made up of acquiring knowledge of facts, concepts, etc., and then using that same knowledge to develop skills. Okay, and you'll see at the end of this talk as well when we're discussing skills how this ties up to what we speak about in pedagogy and epistemology as well. So, in the first core element that we see there, content. Content is pretty, it's a straightforward thing. However, some of the topics or some of the areas that we cover when it comes to content as a core element is that, media differs in the extent to which they can represent different content. So, for instance, if you are using a video, it differs from what you may achieve by instructing somebody to listen to a particular voice note. Or if you are using a voice note, you are restricted in that a person needs to visualize in their mind what needs to be, what is trying to be taught. So the media differs in the extent of which they can represent different content. And it's not necessarily that one is better than the other. It's more a question of what is better suited to what we are trying to teach. So one of the reasons that media can also differ is the varying symbol systems. So this may be, for instance, we learn or we pick up different aspects from different types of media. So for instance, I will give you an example. An example that is given also in your textbook as well is what do you know or what is your knowledge on the concept of heat and how did you learn it? So you would have probably learnt, heat. Your first instance would have been, derived from your touch sense. So if you were little or whatever the case may be, and you approached perhaps the stove or some appliance, it was probably hot, and you first picked up on that. However, if you are reading a textbook or you're reading something, heat may be represented in Celsius or Fahrenheit. So it is a different symbol system. Previously, it would have been your physical touch, or next in this next part, it would have been reading about it in form of a Celsius or Fahrenheit symbol, where temperature is represented, or it could have just been observing an experiment. So basically, if you conducted an experiment with basically the sun, and you had a micro magnifying glass and you try to heat up something or make it catch light. These are different forms about learning the same or similar concept of heat and so on and so forth. So what essentially the point we are trying to get across is that in each of these cases, there is a different symbol system that is employed. And what is the best way of actually representing this? Is there a best way? These are the questions we as teachers need to focus on when choosing media, as different symbol systems may, enhance our teaching style and the learning style as well. So another thing that we can pick up on is also when choosing the media, certain media handle certain aspects better. So we come to this idea of concrete knowledge and abstract knowledge. So when we speak about concrete knowledge, we refer to things that are factual and things that are data based. And when we speak about abstract knowledge, we speak in a very abstract manner in terms of ideas and how we try to convey an idea. So abstract knowledge and concrete knowledge are very different. Abstract knowledge, the difference here being that abstract knowledge can be communicated in words or verbally in a classroom. So you may be successful in conveying an idea to students and they may grasp that. However, in terms of concrete knowledge, where you need to explain how a certain programming concept works, this which is probably known as concrete knowledge, just giving an example, you need to choose media that is more suited to that. So just explaining it in words may not be enough. It may need to be written down. It may need to be recorded. You know, so These are two concepts when we speak about, and you should be aware of as a teacher, is using the idea of concrete knowledge and abstract knowledge. Can the media that I'm choosing best convey my abstract knowledge that needs to be said, or do I need to use, a different media for my concrete knowledge, and which media exactly? So some very important points that we've spoken about on this topic of content, that it will affect your choosing how you're going to deliver material in your class. Abstract knowledge and concrete knowledge, and the media that we use to convey this. The next, uh, the second aspect or core element that we can speak about is the content structure. So you've got your content, it's laid out, abstract, concrete, or whatever it may be. And now we're going to determine the structure of this. So as you can see on your slide there, we differ in content structures based on whether something is a linear or sequential, or whether it is something that is requires a parallel activity where there is branching out and there are alternative routes. So if you are explaining a problem, generally this could be explained in a linear fashion, and this may require media, for example, such as a book or telephone or a radio, where everything is laid out in a linear fashion. However, if you are requiring to speak about something that is more in depth, and speaking in a linear fashion, it may not necessarily be the best way. Maybe, for example, you may need to come back to a certain topic when students didn't understand something. So, backtracking one step back to explain. This could be done via computers in terms of a live class session, or, this is just an example. So, is the content structure that we are delivering, is it something that is linear or sequential, or is it something that could be done in a parallel activity manner? And then, depending on the structure of your content, your choice of media may differ, obviously. And then, we come to the last core element that we spoke about, development of skills. Skills could be anything that you are trying to teach in the class. They could be something intellectual or psychomotor or affective. So different types of skills, being taught in your class. This may be, something that's, uh, you know, picked up from your lesson content. So as we said before, coming back to that original definition where those researchers mentioned, learning is made up of two parts. It's the part where you are actually, teaching people about the knowledge of data, facts, and so on and so forth. And then the second part comes in where they use that knowledge to develop skills. So we can basically bring this back to, for our understanding, back to Bloom's taxonomy. So how does this relate? So if you recall, back in when we discussed Bloom's taxonomy, the different levels of cognition, where at the lowest level we have basic recall, understanding, and so on and so forth. And if you have taught something, and basically if students have understood it at the most basic level, this is the very least that may be the outcome of a lesson or a course or whatever that may be. However, if you have conducted a lesson where it has required students to access a higher level of cognition, this application level, which is the highest level of cognition, it forces students to use their skills and evaluation ability and analytical ability to actually carry out the work. And in doing so, they are actually developing skills. Now, where did they develop these skills from? It was from the content that you delivered initially. So this comes around. This is full circle. So basically, the content that you originally taught is now coming back in terms of application. And learning is, as we said, two parts, where you learn the content initially, and then you obviously use that later on to develop skills by applying it. So students, in this talk, we've spoken about the three core elements, and you will see in later talks and lectures and stuff, we will be mentioning this as well. Okay, so today's lecture, we covered this introductory aspect of the core elements. The one other aspect that I will speak about is um, your upcoming infographic assignment. I have created your, what you call it, your example infographic that I will be posting up this week in week 9 lecture folder. So if you are needing an idea of what is expected, you can go ahead and look at that and let me know if you have questions. Remember, your time for submission for the upcoming assignments in terms of the computer lab assessment is up on ECI. You can check the dates. Please follow the date on ECI as it is probably different to the one I gave you. However, it is at a later time, so do not stress about that. Your due date for the infographic, it is later this month, I believe. Yeah, I will post it up on Moodle. Please follow the, sorry, I'll place it up on ECI. Please follow the date on ECI for that submission. It will not change for the infographic from before, as I mentioned. And then, obviously we will have your test two at some point later this month, at the end of this month. This will follow the same format as well, wherein you will have a week where it is open and then you will have 24 hours to complete that. Okay, students, if you do have any further queries or questions, please feel free to contact me at my email address and I will respond as soon as possible. Thank you.